Okay, we would like to reconvene to the regular meeting at 6:06. At this point, we have nothing to report out for closed session, and we will be reconvening to close after our regular meeting. So we will move on to our patriotic exercise. It is, I would like to, yes, I would like to invite our guest Jeremiah Moe and Nora Tatum from Franklin Elementary to lead us tonight. Hello, would you guys like, if you're comfortable, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself before you begin?
My name is Jeremiah, and I go to Franklin Elementary School. And in fifth grade, and my favorite school subject is science because it lets me engage myself. I'm Noel too. I'm a fifth grader at Franklin Elementary School, and I'm in the same a recent achievement in engineering. So we have a STEM elementary assistant. A few things about me are that I love school, and my favorite subject is English language arts. I enjoy playing basketball, playing the harp, dancing, and arranging. One of my favorite things about Franklin is all of the nice teachers that have helped me, that have helped me with the playing music. All of my teachers have helped me grow, and but I owe a huge thanks to Mrs. Lyons and all that she does for me. For example, Mrs. Lyons always brightened my day and was very kind. I've had an amazing experience at Franklin because of my teachers and support team.
Oh, that was wonderful. Thank you for sharing. Would you like to lead us to the pledge? Feel free to stand up.
Ready, begin.
Should we do one?
No, we'll
each
do them
or
together.
Okay,
Ready? 1, 2, 3. Let's take one more. 1, 2, 3. Perfect. Anyone else? Got him? I got him.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. And action vote. Steve Long.
Here.
Trustee Boy.
I'm here.
Brown.
Here.
Kendall. I'm here. Okay, and approval of the agenda. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve.
Oh, you know what? We have multiple agendas to approve. Do we need to do them all? Or sorry, I'm jumping ahead. Okay, move to approve. Thank you, Dan. Would anyone like to second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
To approval of minutes from January 17th, January 31st, and February 6th. Do those need to be on February? Okay. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve?
And also February 7th.
And February 7th. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from January 17th, January 31st, February 6th, and February 7th, 2023.
Okay. Second, second.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and public statements related to agenda items. We have some statements to be made.
Not at this time, President.
New statement. Okay. And we have Ms. Pichetti, a teacher from McKinley, joining us to speak on behalf of the students.
Hello, thank you for having me. My name is Anita Pichetti, and I'm a third grade teacher at McKinley. I've been at the school for 2 years. and I've really enjoyed teaching in the district and at this wonderful school. The BCE readathon went really well, and students read daily and tracked their minutes with great effort. It was fun watching all the wonderful reading and support from BCE. We would love to thank the district office for a very positive start to the new year. We are enjoying the videos from the newsletters where we get to meet more of the district staff. We also greatly appreciate the positivity from our interim superintendent, Marlon Phillips, and seeing her visit our classrooms to observe all of the wonderful learning that's happening. Teachers are excited for the many celebrations going on campus for the month of February, including Lunar New Year, Valentine's Day, 100th day of school, African American History Month, and President's Week. The McKinley team has really enjoyed our parent conferences this month. We have been able to discuss the successes of our students and set goals on what we will achieve for the rest of the school year. All of us teachers are working really hard this February, including our specialists, and we as a staff are really hoping that tenure will be considered for our PE and music teachers. We value their hard work and want to recognize them for all that they do to make our district so great. Thank you so much for your support of our schools, and McKinley is looking forward to a great rest of the school year.
Thank you. Okay, and statement of principal.
And I totally put Noelle up to saying all that nice. I think the first thing that we as a group wanted to say is how thrilled we are that Lisa is back on campus, who she's a key member of our team. We missed her, and it's great to see her back. So that's the main positive thing we have to say. It's enrollment and re-registration season for BSD right now. All the elementary schools hosted kindergarten tours, which were well attended, some better at some schools than others. BIS has been hosting parent and student tours. They've also been very successful, well received, and there are still opportunities to attend. There's an evening tour and a parent panel on the 1st of March. And then student-led tours for incoming students, which is a great idea. And apparently the first one went very well. And we have more on the 28th of February, the 1st of March, the 2nd of March, the 6th of March, and the 7th of March. So huge number of opportunities for students to get up and see them. Sorry, apologies. We are seeing registrations coming in now for new TK and K students. Again, more at some sites than others. We only have 16 at Franklin, so if anyone's out there, please come to Franklin. Re-registration for returning students also happening, which is a little bit earlier than has been in the past, but families are really getting on to that now. Principals and teachers all encouraging families to re-register as quickly as possible to help us with staffing decisions for next year as that's on the horizon. DLI registrations are coming in as well, and the deadline for those registrations is June 27. We have, as the teachers just said, we have several celebrations on campuses across the district since we last saw you. The BCE readathon results were released and they were all celebrated. 100th day of school was marked with math projects, writing projects, dress up, arts and crafts. Valentine's Day introduced the concept of a post office to many of our students, as well as bringing a lot of joy and rather a lot of sugar crushes. Principals still spending quite a lot of time focused on securing substitute teachers. We're looking forward to what will sure be a positive impact on the situation from our new HR director. We'd, in the meantime, like to give a huge shout out to our site secretaries who created time and space in their already packed days to make sure we have staffed classrooms to keep our students safe and learning. We finished up a second round of benchmark assessments for the children, and intervention teams are going to be spending time analysing data and putting supports into place for students who need it. I think we're all looking forward to a break next week and then back to school for a few weeks before spring break. And at Franklin, at least we're going to be having a big focus on SEL in the coming weeks after the vacation, reteaching campus expectations and procedures, refocusing on our Falcon 4, which is our PBIS system, trying to take responsible and be your best. Spending time in classrooms on zones of regulation and strategies to regulate self-regulation and emotional regulation, and re-emphasizing connection, collaboration, and positive relationships in all the classrooms.
Thank you. Okay, statement of Marla's focus.
Thank you for all those great things. Today wrapped up our third and final day of our California Reading and Literature project that all of our K2 teachers attended, and I just want to give a huge thank you to everybody that split classrooms, specialists, principals, secretaries, our director of HR, everybody that went above and beyond so that our teachers could attend that, because I know it was a big lift. We had 3 days for this year, and we'll have 3 days next year. And then all of our K2 teachers in Burlingame will have been trained in it. So that was a huge lift, and I just cannot say thank you enough. Today really focused around assessments and decodable readers. So I'm looking forward to working with our K2 teachers to see, with our curriculum that we adopted through Benchmark, what we would like to look at doing with supplementing and supplanting to see what we could bring back for decodable readers going forward for next year. So I'm looking forward to having that conversation going forward. We also had grade level meetings this week where they focused around math with illustrative math, and also field trips and conversations on professional learning, and looking at also talking a little bit about field trips for next year, I heard. So I look forward to continuing those conversations because that's something that's really fun. And then we coming up next month before our next board meeting, we will also have a work day. And there was a conversation floated among some of the grade levels of bringing alumni back in the upper grades, and hearing some student stories. So we will be offering a breakfast for teachers that want to come, because it is a work day, so they do not need to come. And we have some students that have some unique stories. A student that has previously transitioned, a student that has dyslexia, and a couple other students, and other students that might want to come and tell their stories. And then we'll have it moderated by students. And anybody that wants to come and hear it, they're welcome to come. And so it'll be an interesting thing. So we're looking forward to continuing that conversation and opening it up to professional learning and open space. So it was part of a conversation through affinity groups. We had our first staff AAPI affinity group that was well attended, and I heard it was a great space for people to come and share. So I look forward to continuing having those areas where people can come and learn from each other. So thank you for allowing that time, and I look forward to more conversations as we go forward. Great.
And now statement of board members. Okay.
Yes, so since the last meeting, I attended the owners committee meeting with Dan, and we had a great discussion, and that's on our agenda too. So we'll be talking about the things about that meeting. And I also attended the joint concert that at VHS with BIS, Crocker, and VHS. So jazz band, wind ensemble, the concert band. It was pretty awesome to see like our students standing next to their counterparts in high school, and seeing that role modeling go on. So I'm glad that we were able to do that. That's it.
Nothing for me to share.
Nothing to report.
And nothing from me either.
Hey, wow. Well, I was on January 19th at the most recent Jedi meeting. That was with the math teachers at BIS. And the focus of it was to sort of target some of the growth opportunities that we identified in so that was really great. Marla, and she worked with the teachers to sort of understand what their areas were. You know, to removed. It's been a great idea. Marla walks away with the great books, but support them. I also wanted to acknowledge the heavy lift that the teachers and admins and secretaries were doing for all of our staff shortages and getting all of our K2 teachers to DLP. I heard to the grapevine that it was a lot of work, so thank you. It's a big deal to have all of our teachers trained and have that consistency across the board. And for those of you here, you know, but We also had our governance retreat, which was really helpful, and it was a time for us to evaluate ourselves, how we're doing as a board, and reflect on what we can do to grow and be a stronger board. And we did identify some areas of growth, and we also identified where we are quite strong and share that community with our strength. And thanks to our negotiations team for getting us off to a wonderful start. Hopefully BSD is just as good. Okay. Moving on to the consent agenda. I'm going to read a little bit from the consent agenda. The consent agenda is a way to consolidate many items considered by the board to be routine business. These items often require approval but do not need discussion. All trustees have reviewed the items in advance of the board meeting. Members of the board, staff, or public are able to request specific items to be discussed and removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda. The superintendent and staff recommend approval of all consent items. Movement of any suggested consent items is appropriate at this time. Would anyone like to remove any items? Would anyone like to make a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Brown. And second? I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Moving on to item 6, education and our presentation.
Good evening. Good evening. I'm Nate Wong. I'm the coordinator of assessments and special projects. Good to see you. So tonight I wanted to give you an update on chronic absenteeism across the district for trimester 1. So we are continuing to monitor this data on a regular basis, but this was kind of the easiest chunk of data to present to you here today. So first I'll just define the difference. There's a lot of different terms surrounding attendance, and these are all outlined in our board policies. But chronic absenteeism, which is what we'll be discussing tonight, is when a student is absent at least 10% of the instructional days for which they were enrolled. And that's regardless of being excused or not. Truancy is if a student misses at least 30 minutes or more of instructional minutes for at least 2 days in a school year. Without an excuse. So that could be 3 full days, that could be 3 days they were 45 minutes late without an excuse. So 30 minutes and up. Habitual truancy is if they've been reported as truant for three or more times in the school year. And this definition also provides that we have made appropriate attempts to contact and speak with the family. Chronic truancy is if a student has been absent from school without a valid excuse for 10% or more of the instructional days for which they were enrolled. Okay, so differentiated assistance. During the 2018-2019 academic school year, Burlingame School District was identified for differentiated assistance for both based on data from the previous school year on the California School Dashboard. So students with disabilities and vulnerable students were both at the red performance level on the 2018 California School Dashboard, and red is the lowest category. And this was for both absenteeism and suspension. Students with disabilities, students with disabilities and vulnerable students both moved up 2 levels to the yellow performance level for chronic absenteeism on the 2019 dashboard, so the very next year. Students with disabilities moved up 3 levels to the green performance level, and vulnerable students moved up 4 levels to the blue performance level for suspension on the 2019 dashboard. So because of this improvement, in both chronic absenteeism and suspension for both student groups, Burlingame School District was removed from differentiated assistance in 2019 and 2020. However, despite that, we continue to monitor these metrics very closely, just to make sure that we're doing everything we can for all of our students to succeed.
Nate, did you actually, because I think when you were trustees, they don't
Yes.
know what the district gets when it doesn't need a differentiated assistant. There is a money, there's an amount associated with. Oh,
Yes, and I don't actually know what the exact amount is, but I know we get grant money for differentiated. We do, and actually, so the county offices of education, or the county office of education, is required to support us directly, in terms of getting us out of differentiated assistance.
right, so back then, I think what the county did is they took the money. So the money can actually is designated for the school district that is placed on differentiated assistance, but then they decided, hey, why don't we pool this money of all the districts within San Mateo County who are receiving that money so that they could consolidate it and offer professional
Consultation
development,
services.
right, consultation, professional development, that sort of thing to everyone who needed it, rather than having us say what, or use the money on our own. for
Right,
our own
instead of us getting it directly.
yeah, which, there are pros and cons to both, but, given that we got out of it, I think it was well used. Yeah, so there is a money amount that is associated with that.
And I don't know that it's, a percentage or.
Yeah, I don't know how they determine how much money it is. It was like 150, something like that.
Yeah, I don't remember the exact amount. We did get out of it very quickly compared to other.
We did.
Slide. Okay. Thank you for that. So this is the overall trend in chronic absenteeism broken down by student groups. Of course, student groups that we don't have very many students in are not shown. A couple of things to point out. Again, we were in differentiated assistance for the 2018-19 academic school year. And also that very same school year was the same, the 2018-2019 school year was also the last full year of data, attendance data, valid attendance data before we went into distance learning. So just to keep that in mind, that's why I've skipped over the distance learning years there. And then data for the 2022-23 school year, which is current, is from trimester 1 only, and that goes from the beginning of the school year to November 18th.
That's a quick question. Sure. Is for this slide and actually all of the others, is chronic truancy reflected in chronic absenteeism? Or
Yeah,
are
so
they two separate things?
they're two separate things, but they are related.
Right, but so in this chart, these numbers, do they also reflect the chronic truancy?
No, this is just absenteeism, yes. And the reason I went that route is because that is what is measured on the California school dashboard. So it's chronic absenteeism that would, that is what we were in differentiated assistance for. So chronic absenteeism is 10% days missed or more, whether or not they were excused, whether or not a student was excused. Truancy has to do with a lack of valid excuse.
So as the school year progresses, it's 10%, this would go down.
That's what I'm imagining. We already are starting to see it decline slightly. An example I was thinking of was if a student was absent 5 days in September due to an illness, it would take them until the first week of November, assuming they didn't miss any other days, to get below that 2% threshold. So, yeah.
So the other years are full years and 22-23 is only the first trimester. So it's if that's a valid effect, it probably is gonna be higher just based on that difference alone, right? I mean, if we think that some of those chronically absent students will fall out of the category as they get more. I guess one bout of COVID or even a flu or serious cold would put you into that category.
Right, yeah, so it's a very short range of time. So we hope to see that these lines all flatten a bit. Yes,
Yeah, given that there's a full school year for the 21-22, we know that it's trending up.
correct, yeah. And you know, part of that could be that people are comfortable traveling now. And so there's just more vacations happening. And also COVID is still very much a thing, so. Anything else?
I mean, hopefully part of it is people are keeping their kids home when they're sick. More than
Yes.
they risk.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. That's another thing too. I think there's a heightened sense of responsibility for that now.
And very clear messaging coming from the school.
Yes. Right. Absolutely.
Because definitely pre-COVID, there were people sending kids to school who should not have been in school.
Right.
Well, and even as a parent, I'm sending my kid, or not sending my kid to school with like the most basic symptoms.
Right, whereas 3 years ago.
I
you
was
said
that.
it.
Is this divided into like exclusive?
This is not.
Yeah, I mean, do you have,
I
I don't want to ask, you don't have that.
let's see. I do for the elementary schools. The reason I didn't break it apart was because.
The only
very-
reason I said this because you mentioned vacation, so I was like, oh.
Oh, yeah,
It could
right.
be an excuse.
Right, the reason I didn't break it out that way is because BIS, it's because of the periods. It's very hard to measure that and to pull that data out. So,
But the truancy data would not have the sick effect, right? Because presumably they're excused if they're sick, right?
correct,
So that would be, this includes excused and unexcused.
right, so if I was absent for 10% of the days, but half of those days were excused, I would actually not be chronically. Right. I would be chronically absent, but not chronically.
And I would hope that we know that chronically truant is much smaller than chronically absent.
Yeah. And you know, we do follow up with families, when we don't. Or the sites follow up with families when we don't receive any communication from them as to why the student is absent, so.
I just want to interject too, that our principals and our sites do a great job about independent study packets too. So we also offer and work with our families on independent study packets too, that if a student's going to be gone for a length of time. Under 16 days, we do work and offer independent study packets. Under 16 days, we work with the classroom teacher. Over 16 days, we do work through the long-term independent study board policy. Which does add, you have to have a virtual check-in every day for 30 minutes. That would counteract this, but they don't get counted as absent, because when they turn in their packets, they do get counted as being having been in class.
Engaged.
Engaged. I think I could think of the word, thank you, Nate.
What's the lead time? How much notice do you need to give?
It's pretty quick. I mean, I will tell you that our principals work magic and our teachers work magic to get the turnaround. We ask for a week, but you know, things happen. Grandparents pass away and we work really quickly. So we always ask for people to reach out to their sites and let us, we ask for a week, but our sites are really, they do work magic when we did.
What's the minimum length of time to be considered for?
It's three days. The new law is 3 days. So we work really quickly. And if we do, I mean, at the end of the day, our kids have missed so much school, our goal is to have them not miss school. And that's the teachers and the principal's goal at all times. Sorry,
No,
I didn't mean to interject, but I just want to point that out too.
Yeah, no, thank you. So this is the overall view. And then the two areas that the two student groups for which we were in differentiated assistance, I wanted to break those out separately here. Again, that year of differentiated assistance was the 2018-19 school year. And again, that was the last year of full data. Any questions?
It showed up in 1819, but it was actually counting.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, so the school dashboard, it's a little interesting. It takes some adjustment thinking about this, because it's always a year behind. Because they take data from the previous year, compile it, and then come up with these metrics. And so this is a comparison of our districts against the state of California and San Mateo County. The caveat here is that the state data I cannot break apart into only non-unified school districts. However, the county data is much easier to do that, so I was able to remove data from school districts with high school students.
Really, really bad in the state.
Yeah. Yeah, it's clearly been quite a struggle everywhere. And so I know a point of interest here was absences prior to a long break. And so this is the trend in student absences during the final week before winter break. So just keep in mind that we don't always have a full week. So you can see the top 3 lines there don't have a Friday. And the very top line there, the blue line is this year. And I was able to include the 2019-2020 school year because school wasn't closed until March. So we did have full and valid data for this. Yeah, any questions?
For this one, it just seems like it's really important for us to be pushing out.
Yes.
You can't take the day, you can't leave early.
Yeah.
And that can happen at PTA meetings, it can happen at the principal level, on the teacher level, and the district level.
I'm sorry, this is BIS. This next slide over here is the elementary schools. I forgot to mention that. So this is BIS.
It's still bad.
I'm not saying that makes it.
Yeah.
So BIS did not have a minimum day.
That's true.
The elementaries did have a minimum day of the last day going into winter break this year, correct?
Yes.
There was quite a mismatch with the high school.
Right.
Yes. So we, that's one thing we identified was that looking at the calendar, the high school, and in fact, just noticing and asking around, a lot of districts were off the week prior. So, or during this week.
I found the opposite. When I talked to friends who live not in Burlingame, they matched us more than our high school district. I thought our high school district made an unusual choice. I don't know why.
Yeah, and that might be because going back to the previous year, they did align with us. So
Traditional.
this could be more of an anomaly.
Yeah.
So
Do you know what their break is? It's probably.
They did.
We have it.
They did have it.
Did it?
I don't remember that.
We have it because when we go to calendar committee, we do take that in with us to look at.
I don't think ours changed for next year, did it? I mean, it's following the same. And so is the elementary schools.
Right, do we need some sort of email campaign 3 weeks before break? Just
Even
remind
before, people are planning on vacation.
Oh, that's true, maybe in like September.
We can definitely start. We have a lot of support through attendance works and through our new social worker. So we can start through our social media and our community engagement.
And we're back to being dinged if students aren't here, right? We lose money. So I think, and I know messages that we have given in the past that actually spelled out how much money we didn't get because of this number of students who missed 3 days before winter break. My parents were shocked, right? And I know that households were like, oh, whoops. And then the next year they did not do that. So education about there is actually an effect on us if they don't come.
And I think a lot of that time we can work with the school, yeah, it has a lot of the
conversation happening anecdotally in my room.
And I think it's also just a psychological leftover from COVID, for vacation. For example, I met a number of families this week that said they're leaving town this Friday morning because we're out of school next week. And so we'll just have to attack that earlier, that mindset.
I like the idea of the fiscal impact. That'd be interesting to take the ADA and then we can make infographics and put it out through. I like that idea a lot.
I remember when I was going to Lincoln, I remember that. So this leads us to kind of what we've been discussing already, your next steps. I really more outlined the educational approach, but of course there's all these other things that I was doing. So really kind of there's this whole process that we have in place that starts at the site level and and it works its way up to the district office and beyond if need be. But so the district office staff, will continue to work with teachers, mental health staff, administrative assistants, principals, to review this data on a regular basis. And they do themselves as well, but it's good to get other eyes on it, to make sure that we're flagging issues early. Of course, the sites will continue to ensure that families are contacted when regarding chronic fluency in a timely manner. BIS currently holds weekly attendance meetings to review data, and they're going to continue to do that. Home visits will continue as deemed necessary. And BSD will continue to hold attendance review team meetings and student attendance review board meetings with families after two truancy letters have been sent. And basically the SART or the student attendance review team is a site level team. That includes the site administrator as well as general ed teachers and mental health staff. The SARB at the district level would include district level administrators. So we are also continuing our partnership. We're part of a consortium called the Learning Communities for School Success Program. And it's a grant that we partnered up with 5 partner districts, and San Antonio Union High School District is the lead on that, and they wrote a grant that we were awarded. And the grant provides funds for 3 social workers across the consortium. And we have a social worker that is assigned to both us and local. And the idea there is to target chronic absenteeism at the middle school level specifically. So, and then our mental health staff will continue to develop restorative interventions and work with families to support their attendance. At the site level, we have student success teams for SSTs, which again are made up of the same kind of people, mental health staff, administrators, general ed teachers, and they look at the data, involving the whole child and try to determine what kind of supports they might need to succeed. So for instance, an intervention for someone who's chronically tardy might be, oh, hey, let's show the family how to use their phone as they want to talk. Let's talk about an earlier bedtime, things like that. And then we'll continue to consider school climate, engagement, and connectedness as focus areas. And in order to collect that data, we administer the California Healthy Kids Survey every year. And we will continue to monitor this. And I know you was talking about social emotional learning. That kind of thing does impact. Any questions?
Yeah, I'm not sure that's for you. About how the new coordinator position fits into this.
Well, it's, I think Marla, well, let's see, I know I had some notes on this, so in terms of outreach, and in terms of, so we're talking about like getting the message out, right? That would be something that the student coordinator could do, and we're posting, affinity nights and things like that, so just getting the message out, and communicating with families and getting them engaged, I think really helps in terms of getting buy-in from our education partners. I don't know if you have more to say, Marla.
I think it's it's everybody thing. I think that it's not just the community engagement coordinator. I think it's an everybody source, because I think so often the barriers are things that we can all work towards. It can also not only be teaching them about alarm clocks, it's also teaching the understanding of why, because I think so often it's the 3 minutes to start of kindergarten. Parents might not understand how much that can set them up. So it's having that conversation oftentimes. And also it's explaining the start of the day, the routine, and also understanding from the parents and having that conversation of what the barriers really are, and not just making assumptions as to what they are. And what can we do to help remove those barriers? Sometimes it could be a car issue, it could be something. It is often, I mean, kids can't control parents, right? It's not necessarily the kid that's the component. So what can we do to help support that? And what does that look like? And I will say that I think that we're very lucky, because our partnership with Champions and Chief of Business Official Waterberg has done a great job of seeing how Champions can help support kids get there a little bit earlier. Because sometimes it's dropping off a student when parents can't get there, or getting to work or something like that. BIS, if you remember, did a later start to help with that, because we were having a hard time getting kids from one school to another school. So I think it's a community. I think Burlingame really listens to that and does help to support that. So I think it is the community engagement person. I think our principals have been great talking to the parents. I think our teachers know their parents. So it is a whole community coming together to make sure that everybody understands the why, but also listens. Every family is unique and their situation is unique. So I think it's a lot of those things. And sometimes it's breakfast. I mean, it's what can we do to help support students too?
Absolutely.
I'd be interested in hearing a similar report to this. After things have normalized even more post-COVID. And also having it later in the year so that we can see like a real reflection of what that year looks like. And then I was curious, and I'm guessing you don't have this number now, but maybe we could just follow up later if you have the truancy number.
I don't have it off the top of my head,
Yeah,
but
so we can just follow up.
we can put it in now. Thank you
Well, that
all.
was really great. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thanks, Misha.
And now on to item 17, workforce housing feasibility report, summary of the budget.
Thank you, President. Tonight, we bring forward some updated information on workforce housing. And we are seeking direction from the board on how to move forward. We have six different options that we would like to discuss with you tonight. The first is, should staff continue to build workforce housing at the two sites, the district office and in between BIS and Franklin? Option 2 is 2 and 3 are, should we continue to study building housing on either the district office or BIS Franklin? Option 4 is, should we continue to study buying a complex at a different location? Option 5 is, should we move forward seeking partnership opportunities with public and private developers? And the last option 6 is, should staff, should we not continue to look at workforce housing at this time and remove the $19 million from the budget summary that will be presented next? A couple things to note is that with the Assembly Bill 2295, there were questions if we could have higher density housing on our sites due to change in laws. It is our understanding through our legal counsel that we at this time do not qualify for higher density housing. So what was reported to you in September, those remain the same. We also reached out to find out what it would cost for polling fees to find out if another bond would be supported in our city to pay for workforce housing. And that cost, it will run between $38,000 and $43,000. And I want to point out that you cannot use bond funds for that, so we would have to use general fund dollars. Tim Ryan, coordinator of bond and facilities, and Richard Toronis from ZTA are both here tonight and answer any questions on that you guys have.
This.
John's workforce.
I'm willing to talk about the war.
Have any questions? Roger?
I guess I would just, I think the new information site was regarding the change in, potential height limits and, density options for particularly this parcel at, Franklin and BIS. And the conclusion that I took away from your analysis was that, it may be theoretically possible, but it's, unlikely to be, we're not going to know with any certainty. We certainly, if we're one of the early movers, are not going to know until there's some litigation and lots of things will happen before it's settled. So, so effectively, we're kind of back to the same proposals that we looked at or options that we looked at back in September. I just want to confirm that's accurate.
Yeah, I think as described in the report, it's yet to be borne out. The interesting thing about the legislation, and just before you looked at it, is the way that it's structured is school districts as owners of potentially developable property. This legislation simply allows districts as a potential developer applicant, to avail themselves of the same increased density bonuses, increased development standard exemptions to things like floor area ratio, height, setbacks, etc. If you're providing a certain percentage of affordable units, just like any other developer, for profit or nonprofit, might propose within a city. And so this legislation allows school districts to avail themselves of those same opportunities, the same bonuses and exemptions. So the question that we were sort of asking ourselves when we talked about this a while back was, is it sort of an automatic thing that we could automatically go to 30 units per acre over the 8 units per acre that are currently allowed under the current ordinances? And it's not an automatic. It's an iterative process. The developer, in this case, the district, proposes a project, applies to the city, it goes through that negotiated process. Because you're providing a certain number of affordable units, you have to put forth proof that without these bonuses, without these exemptions, you wouldn't be able to provide those affordable units, et cetera, et cetera. So they're not insurmountable hurdles, but you can see it's an iterative process where district has to commit to a project first and then go through that negotiation with the city.
Thank you.
I was going to say the answer to your question is yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Comments or questions or opinions that people would like to share?
I always so what all we talked about this, I think, in other meetings about the housing. What it boils down for me is the money. We have, I think, maxed out our bond capacity at this point. Polling the community on whether they would like it or not is almost like, that'd be nice to know, but then we actually can't go out for it because we don't qualify to, have more bond capacity. So I just feel like it really comes down to feasibility. And I don't think we have the money. And so I just feel like we should not be moving forward with the housing And, you know, in future discussions, talk about where else we could put some of the money we were kind of setting aside, which wasn't nearly enough to do the project, but which was kind of carved out to maybe start the process. I would be in favor of just taking it off of our discussion list and then having future discussions about what else we could do with the 19 million or whatever it is.
I would like to add, when I did speak with TBWBH Props and Measures about doing the polling, he was very much adamant that a bond for workforce housing alone would not pass. That if we wanted to look at, if we qualified for another waiver and an additional bond, we have a brand new bond. But he said that they are seeing in the market workforce housing alone, that communities do understand the importance of it, but when they don't see it as directly educating their students, there are questions.
Jefferson's bond was just raised on workforce.
I would just add, you asked 6 questions. For my vote, no, yes.
So, okay, yes, on the last 3.
No,
That's
4 no's, 2 yes.
Okay, so should staff seek partnering opportunities with public and private developers? Yes. And should staff not move forward and adjust the measure of budget allocation for money? Yeah.
We have reached out to the city and we have thrown our name in the hat, I guess it's called, for any developer. We have put the word out. We've been given like, maybe so-and-so, there is the name. And every time I'm like, great, I'd love to talk to them. It's like crickets. So they really don't.
I would imagine that's a very nuanced relationship that involves time, a little luck and persistence. And so, but to build on Trustee Wong's comment, I'm not in favor of housing at the site we're currently at or at the BIS site because financial reasons. I think it was, were we at 18 million, the building for 22 units? And I'm also not in favor of bullying, just on principle. I think we're elected to make those decisions, budgetary decisions. So we don't pull that out. So that's my position.
Yeah, I agree with Florence and Dan both. I think part of it for me, I mean, it's the cost. So at 750,000 per unit in today's dollars, with a lot of uncertainty around whether we can actually get it done. I don't think either of our 2 sites are particularly well suited to get, you know, enough scale to actually drive that cost down. So it's, we theoretically could do it, but we don't have the ideal location. So it's quite expensive and we really don't have the dollars for it. Even if we went out and had communities support to borrow more money for this project, it's taking away from something else that we may need to do in the future. So I agree with Dan that I think, and Amanda, that partnering with the city, if there's a developer that wants us to sign up to, you know, agree to rent a slice of the affordable units at the affordable rates, then we can allocate it to teachers, and that would be fantastic, right? That's part of their approval with the city to get their project approved, and we just agree to supply the, you know, that's maybe wishful thinking, but something like that where we can, like as Dan said, I don't think it will be easy, but we have the same goals as the city in that respect. So I think clearly that's worth pursuing or talking about. So I agree with yes on 5, and I guess I'm on the same page as my 2 colleagues here.
Okay, well, yeah, this is very frustrating because there's clear need for workforce housing. We pulled the teachers and, or not just the teachers, staff, and there was a desire for it. It was part of our bond funding, but like our bond language when we went out for the vote. But yeah, we don't actually have the money and we don't have the capacity for another bond to do it. Also, it's only 22 units here and 22 units there. It's not, we needed, I think the 44 together was a good idea, but the 22 on each side, I don't think is a good use of land. and the resources. But it is very frustrating. I do want to mention, go back to your polling comment though. It wouldn't be that we were polling the public to tell us how to vote. It would be like if you're going out for a bond, do I know if there was enough interest for them to vote for it? Because we need the public's support. So before you go out for a bond, so it is a good time to. Then at that point, it would be good to go out for a bond, for sure. That we have the community's interest. We've done that. So I guess the thing that I'm trying to figure out. Can we like just be creative, like subsidize rents or, you know, go down those paths? I think we talked about that a little bit. That'd be the first question. And then the next one, for number 4, you know, looking into buying existing housing. I mean, I don't know why we necessarily throw that one out, right away.
So it's the same cost,
Okay,
so we
so
don't have
cost the
the
same. Okay, so and then 5 and 6, yes. So yes, I guess the question is just if we could use some of the money, and if not, I just would really advocate that we continue to partner, look at other districts, what they're doing. I think there are a lot of opportunities right now, and I understand that it's challenging to make that happen, but just never to stop trying.
I'm happy to do more research. I am hearing more and more about district subsidizing rent. It's a question that when we have open positions, and especially people moving from out of state are asking about. So I can look to see what, if anybody in the county, I don't know off the top of my head. But we also, so that bond funds wouldn't qualify for that. So anything we chose to do would come out of our general fund.
Right, and that also would have to be included in like contract language. This is all negotiations.
It would be considered compensation.
I would just say, like, let's not stop trying to think of creative solutions to this sort of clear need.
And that was trustee Wong's comment as well. That would what I would think comment to be that remove these 2 housing proposals, but keep the housing conversation open.
Well,
If there's something out there.
well, of course, if there's something. I think I'm just feeling, we're everything's not working right now for us to be looking at this moment.
Similarly, I'm really glad that we collected all of the information, that we have it in front of us, but I think what it led me to, and we have to put the funds on it as well. Personally, I'd like to, well, similar to you guys, I would like to just explore all of the creative things. I know there's a city in East Bay that even reached out to their community and started working with people that were building ADUs in their community. You know, we can get creative when teachers and staff need that and continue to work with different stakeholders at the city level to see how we can partner with them. But I think what would be important for me if we were to continue is to have more of a strategic plan in place. That is, you know, in 10 years, we are going to build that. And it's not just something that, you know, we clearly have a need. We all feel passionate about it, but it needed, I think it needed a little bit of planning.
Thank you. So just to kind of sum it all up, it sounds like the recommendation of the board is to continue to move forward with partnering. We can, as we meet with developers over developer fees, we can continue to look for those avenues. There is a website that we have access to, and we shared for local housing and stuff like that. We have been able to help some people find like one bedroom apartments. We'll continue to look for other avenues to help our staff that is in need of housing. And then the plan for now is to table it on the actual bond summary. So we will remove the $19 million from the summary that's going to be next. So before we get to that point, I'd like to point out that there is a mistake on it. Workforce housing on it.
All right, moving on to 17. Nope, sorry. Thank you for that. That was very wonderful presentation. We have all of them into.
Thank you, yes.
Okay, all right, and now moving on to 17B. Measure O bond budget allocation summary. And I believe I did it with the board.
Great. So we have tonight in front of you two. One is the current adopted from the board May 31st, 2022. It has no red text in the very top. And then the other has a draft with red text at the top, which is tonight. Okay, we try to do our best to show you what is already approved and changes that are we're going to recommend for this evening. Tonight we're presenting changes or resources, projects, and budgets that capture some previously approved. A number of these things were approved individually. We just have not reflected them yet in this document. Okay. So if we can go to the red text draft revisions February 15th. And if you see on the very left, there are red numbers. Those represent line items that we're going to talk about. So we talk about line number 3, local developer fees. We added $1 million on local developer fees. That was approved by the board June 2022. We're just reflecting it on this document. Line 4, measure M transfer. We reduced it by $68,000 because we found that open EO, that was a measure M expense. And so we paid that expense, but tracked it on measure M. The expense was approved in September 2022. We just didn't capture it before the transfer. BIS line 5, measure O interest. So we got an additional interest, $192,487. Line 13, district-wide technology. The board did approve in May to move $50,000 into another project. We just hadn't shown the reflection of taking it out. Line 21 is bringing that 50,000 in to the auditorium. Line 26 is the new play structure, planters, and landscaping, reducing the budget because we came in under budget at the end of the project. We have an additional 93,000. I do want to say that we are still waiting for some benches, but that is not going to be an additional expense. It's an item that has been backordered because of the pandemic. Line 27, we have reduced the amount to move that project from the budget allocation summary into deferred maintenance, $800,000, and that was approved in June 2022 during the budget approval. Line 28 is the new tree irrigation. It's reducing, taking out $51,000 because the project came in under budget at completion. Line 30, workforce housing feasibility study. It was approved to have an additional $10,500 of scope, which was for exploring surplusing property. And this additional study, so we approved that in October 2022. We just hadn't shown it in this, again, this document. And line 34, converting the existing library and 2 TPA classroom schematic design, moving from tranche 2 budget to expedite design up $165,000. The contract was approved in December of 2022. We just had not reflected it in the budget allocation summary. And I do want to point out that that $165,000 does include some additional funds to help cover any testing that we may have to do, disruptive testing and our engineering for schematic design.
Hey, Tim, question back on 30. So we've expended for the workforce housing feasibility 47.5. Is the balance will that be released since we're not pursuing it further?
No, that is
3,000.
that much. Hold on one second. Line,
Sorry, line 30, the balance of 103,000.
we just haven't been billed yet.
Okay, we have.
Yeah. Or I can say that as of this deed, when we pulled the deed together, we hadn't shown the expense to be paid, but I believe it has started.
Okay.
Yes. Line 42 is converting. Oh, I talked about that. Sorry, I apologize. Moving on 165. So we are coming tonight to ask about a couple of line items, a little direction from the board. The first being line 53, the workforce housing. I believe we got direction from the board that we should reduce that or eliminate that line item. That also affects line item number 7. line item number 7 was the sale of the district office, which that 4 million was to go into the workforce housing budget. And we're gonna need direction on that, whether or not the board thinks we should still sell this building and move into building 1. That is line 33. We currently have a $316,000 budget in there for the schematic design of that project on hold pending direction. Line 39 is part of that same project as is line 40, modernizing the kitchen. I would like to point out on line 40 that the original budget for that project, when Measure O implementation plan was adopted, was 18 million. And it was to build a brand new 2-story building. And at one point during the process, the question was asked, couldn't we just modernize it? Move the district office in and then do a kitchen the same size as the kitchen at Franklin. We looked and there was a possible way to do it. And it seemed to work. So we put a budget in. And then we changed our lunch delivery program, how we wanted to do it, how we wanted to go from disposable utensils and disposable kitchenware to have a scullery where we could wash 3,000, whatever the number is, plates and forks and knives and material. So that kitchen grew significantly, and the cost per square foot of a kitchen is higher than a standard classroom. Also, when we made this change from is it class E, is that what it's called? Occupancy E, which is education to office, it triggered a complete seismic retrofit. And in order to have the kitchen we were going to do, we had new structural improvements we needed to do to have the larger spans. We had walls in between, which were anyway. My point being that we're going to need to come back to the board on whatever direction we get on building 1. With a budget adjustment to reflect the changes we need to implement whatever scope of work that the board wants to talk about. So currently we're showing a balance of a negative $5,492,000. So if somebody said take out the 19 million and don't sell the district office, then that frees up $9.5 million to put towards other projects. Tim. Okay. You did the math? Okay. Yeah. So we're here tonight to ask for some discussion, some direction. We have an owners meeting on March 1st where we can get more in depth, but this is our opportunity to talk to everyone on the board.
The big questions are whether or not to sell this
Yes, ma'am.
and what to do with the building.
Yes, I mean,
Those are the big boulders.
yes, yeah. We have a direction that electric kitchen is an essential item for the district, so that we can support the lunch program of our that we like to do, and it's what to do with the rest of the remainder of the facility. We are going to have to touch the whole structure, even by making it a kitchen. So no matter what, we'll be gutting the interior walls.
Maybe discuss the original other option of the central kitchen remodel.
Remodel of the Franklin campus. Someone had asked, is there a way that you could just expand the kitchen you have? It would mean shutting. We don't have the ability to improve the Franklin kitchen, which is our central kitchen, and keep it operational. It's a more than a 3-month program.
And can you talk about if that could just be done in the summer, or if that's not possible?
Not possible. That's longer than a summer project.
So we were planning to keep the Franklin kitchen operational after the BIS kitchen opens too, so we would have had 2 kitchens, or we were planning.
So the woefully small kitchen, I'm going to use at Franklin, could support the school and continue to support the school. It's used as our central kitchen because it is the largest space we have, not because it's a great center.
Right, so there's a need for a larger kitchen.
Yes, there is a need for a larger kitchen, and it would stay at the school, and we may remove some of the existing material as not needed. They may not need to leave an 8-burner gas stove, at a school. We're doing our best to convert gas to electric, so we may a school kitchen does not need a gas stove. So we hadn't determined as a part of this project what to do with the Franklin kitchen, but maybe something that we do in Hackett.
But the 2 big factors from
the two big factors from at least my standpoint, is just in terms of your program manager, in terms of planning the program. There's the logistic advantage of being able to keep the Franklin kitchen up and running while you're building the new facility and not having to find temporary provisions. Secondly, the location for that central kitchen that is contemplated is the better location is where it's currently planned over at building 1, or at least somewhere in that vicinity or something there. Expanding the Franklin kitchen at that location and then bringing all of the delivery and drop off and all of that to the frontage of Franklin would be logistically a huge, a larger impact. And it can be more easily accommodated than the BIS roadway where it has there, including the trash and the recycling and the composting that's going to be necessary as part of that larger kitchen. So, you know, from my standpoint or from our standpoint, it's still a logical potential location. And then there's just the question of what do you do with the rest of that building, if that's the board's prerogative to continue with that kitchen in that location.
And there's other logistics involved. In fact, if we continue with the program as planned, and we have a scullery where we have a cleaning of all of these utensils and servingware every day, we're going to have a second truck. Right? There'll be multiple runs from the sites in order for us to get our stuff in and out in a timely way.
Not sure if this is a question for you or from the Franklin principal, but does using the Franklin kitchen now interfere with the operations at all at Franklin, or would the operations of Franklin be improved if we weren't there?
It would be improved if we weren't there. Right now, it's the large semi trucks. Oh, I think right here. I know. Is that right? Okay. Deliveries right now at the site, it does affect the parking lot and flow of traffic, especially. I can say that we do our best to manage deliveries not to show up during pickup and drop off, but they do. And at Franklin, it is in the student lane. If we were able to do it in the location that we're currently planning, the truck would be off the center road. Now, would it still drive through traffic? Yes, it would, but it would be parked off.
And are we able to meet the food service program goals we have in the future if we stay at Franklin?
No, and I also wanted to point out that we currently serve our breakfast at break time as a grab and go. In fiscal year 24-25, we will have to serve a full breakfast, and our facilities, there will be no way to do both breakfast and lunch. And there is question, even with the new having a new central kitchen, using satellites, maybe even Franklin for part of breakfast, because the meals are still being cooked at the same time. So our program is expected to actually increase in 2 years from now.
So is your recommendation then that we do need a new kitchen?
Yes.
And the only feasible site is building 1 at BIS that we look at?
If in fact we are using an existing facility, yes, but even if we decided what's best to do is tear that building down and to build something, that's the location. For square feet.
Also, a third of our student population, it would be nice where the most meals are served to be very close.
Probably that they're most likely to eat it too, because
Probably.
elementary school kids are running all over the place.
That's why we need the garbage cans
Got it.
to be able to drive into.
Sort of also next to one of our bigger elementary schools. Yeah.
Okay, so I understand what you're saying about the kitchen. But with respect to this district office, you also asked about that where we're sitting right now. We just said we're not going to use it for workforce housing. So my question for both of you is this current space right now suitable for the district office staff that you have now and into the future? Or do you need a new office?
No.
Where's him?
No, it is for staffing,
This is office.
but there are things that would need to be done.
So maintenance.
No, we need a second exit from this room. We need ADA bathrooms. We need to have there would need to be some improvements. I'm not saying it's a significant amount as new roof. There's some I'm sorry, but there are things that would have to be done.
And is it more cost efficient than to stay here rather than to build a new district office? Yeah.
I'm gonna say yes.
So I did,
I mean, just to specifics, you already own this property, you own this land. It's a building that already exists. The alterations that Tim was talking about, we're talking, not talking millions of dollars. To build a new district office somewhere else. Maybe if you have existing space that you could accommodate it somewhere, again, maybe it might be equal. But because you already own this property, because you would just need to improve it.
And you agree that this suits your needs and will into the future?
There are some things that would have to be done, but they are not outrageous things. But there are things that would have to be done. We'd have to look at supporting some of our walls, reinforcing them, ADA bathrooms or something. Absolutely, we have guests in wheelchairs and they cannot use our facilities, and that's not okay. You're right. There another door. I know CBO Bonnevert has some other ideas too that I'd love to hear her opinion too.
A good thing to point out too is square footage wise, we weren't really gaining square footage. So we were moving from one set to a brand new building. And I would say if there was ever an opportunity, we would actually need more space. If we were going to spend the money on a new building or remodeling, it would be nice to have a bit of a different setup. So we would have been at capacity moving into a brand new building, which was always a concern. So being able to spend funds on this building to help with everything that needs to be done and look at even spending some money on the furniture out in the main area, the cubicles. There's some great plans as part of everything we did on building one to make this space more efficient. I think that there is a lot that can be done. I know we need to look at the parking lot and everything.
Ultimately, it's less money per year, and we have a great space, as you said, that we already own. So I think that makes a lot of sense to give ultimately the money back to the students.
I'm always of the mindset, if you don't have to sell, never sell.
Right. It's a great location. It's
Yes.
convenient for our parents. It's close to a bus line for people to get to us. And that I think is very important. BIS is not on the bus line for our parents that need to get to us.
I would agree. I would not dispose of assets unnecessarily. And so just make sure I heard you correctly, Superintendent. You feel this office can be fixed in a way that suits your staff and into the future as well.
And I'm gonna be honest, I think that Tim and Richard do a great job of communicating with us and asking the people that work in this office what they need. So I appreciate that too.
Right now, we have district staff in other locations and we may need to continue that. So I don't want to ever think we're saying we can move everybody back in here. We need space for IT storage, we need space for maintenance, so it is.
And if we did just do the kitchen at BIS, the extra space there that would have been district office could be used for whatever those needs were used.
And that's something we'd like to work in detail with the owners on about, here's programming and spaces that potentially could fall into that, that use of that space, yes.
I would also like to point out though, there's staff that's at satellite areas for a reason, and I think it's important that we work with the departments and the staff for that too, because for instance, right now, the learning hub is a learning hub where people come together. I mean, so I think it's important that we continue to work with departments for their whys and make sure that they're in conversation with this too.
And I wasn't trying to.
Yeah, no, I know, but I think that that's something, so I don't want to just assume everybody wants to be together, because I think that that's important too.
I don't want to move all the
Yeah.
counselors. and all the
We don't
facilities.
They don't want to be here. They don't want to be.
Predominantly IT.
We also have a parking problem.
I preach this a lot and I'm sorry, I have the mic in, but
Richard.
there is. You've got to have too much storage. Because we have to be able to flex. On those days where they say, oh, we're gonna get 500 new computers, they have to have land somewhere. Or we're gonna get a new curriculum, it has to land, we have to have room to flex. And I know that there's often a lot of, we need to reduce how much storage we have because it's really not, so
So I'm not making a motion, but I would just like to propose and hear trustee comments of the idea of keeping this office here for district staff, fixing it as needed, while simultaneously building the kitchen at BIS with excess space in it that won't be district office, but to be determined. I'm also really eager to hear that it will improve the operation at Franklin. So I think that's something that should have value as well. So that's one.
I think that's the recommendation.
Yeah, and sorry, I'm catching up a little bit, I'm not on the owners committee, but, the 7 million that's on here was for both the kitchen and the district office, or just the kitchen?
It was for the kitchen and district office when we were building an identical Franklin kitchen. And
Okay,
we were moving into the building without adding any square foot.
I see,
And then we found that we should have to do a seismic upgrade and structural improvements.
right,
So
okay, that's what you started with,
Yeah.
yeah, so,
So that budget of 7 million is not sufficient to. That budget of $7 million was not gonna be sufficient to build the kitchen and the DO over there. We were gonna have to come to you. We were
Right.
preparing to come to you with a needed increase to that budget to some degree.
what do we think the kitchen, the bigger kitchen with the current scope, is it gonna be still around 7, or is it more or less than that, do we think?
But we have to touch the whole building to do the kitchen.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's not as simple as saying just do the kitchen because of the seismic upgrades and. But yeah, it might be around a $7 million number, and then the remaining renovation of the rest of the building could be X million, but that's what we have to slow down. Right, would you say?
So when-
But that's why I love doing budgeting on the fly. Well, I just want to say that I don't want to answer that question in a way that becomes, you told us in this meeting.
Yeah, no, I understand, I'm just trying to get us, as we decide how to use the building, just get a sense of.
So when we were looking at moving the district office there and doing the central kitchen, we did not bring that forward to the board. But we were looking closer to 12 to 14 million dollars, just to put that into perspective.
Okay.
So even if we don't build the district office there, what that, is it a learning center? What does that look like? There will still be costs involved.
So it seems like we're saying we'd like to have the kitchen in building 1, right? That would be my opinion as well, not sell this office building, and it seems like there's a lot of bits that need to be flushed out. Yes, and tightened up a bit, so, and then we would talk about at the owners committee, maybe some of the use of building 1 and, as those numbers come. And then could we bring it back at the next board meeting to, when we have more information, or when we just come back?
Yeah. So we do have a March 1st owners meeting, so we can, March 1st, and luckily interim superintendent Silversmith has said she would come to that. So I think that there can be some great conversations. I think we need to make sure that we're asking key people questions and not relying on just past knowledge on what that building could look like. But we definitely can present some options at the March and or April board meetings and continue getting direction.
Because it sounds like maybe we can't go too much farther right now, so there's too many unknowns, right? So I think these would be directions. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, but honestly, the great thing that I'm hearing, and just from my standpoint, just in terms of what we can come back, by freeing up that $19 million, it gives the board some flexibility to be able to make these decisions. That's, even if you take out the 4 million that we would have got from here, you're left with $10 million essentially that you can reallocate. Another thing, and this is just something that we're going to want to bring back to you, is we should start looking now at the program contingency. Some of you may recall from previous programs, as we move through the tranches, we start to draw down on that contingency, because there's no point in keeping $3 million contingency all the way through your program. You should be winnowing that down as you move through, because you don't need as much of a contingency based on a percentage of your program. So that's another X million dollars that you could reallocate. So you're putting yourselves in a great position is what I'm hearing.
So we've never had a bond this large. We've never had a $3 million contingency. And I'm gonna say, I made an error in saying, hold that. Right? So we've held it, and the county's like, you need to spend this within 3 years. What are you doing? So we need to look at, readjust how we're looking at that contingency.
Yeah, and I'll just say that for the people on the owners committee, I would appreciate if in your next discussion, you actually talk about possible areas for reallocation. So that we can talk about that here when we bring it back, just so I know, what, because you'll have more time to talk about priorities and the timing of everything. I would like to know what would be on the horizon.
And at that meeting, we have some emerging needs that have come to our attention, so we'll bring
So our owners committee is Elizabeth and Deb. And then I think one thing maybe we haven't talked about here was, how attached to it says date, a little bit about the education.
Yeah, so I know that there's been some recent discussion on it, are we ready to sell our next series, farm series? And one of the lingering things, what was, we had answered tonight, which is great, you know, what are we looking at doing? And that will give us a better understanding of when we will need to sell. It looks as if based off of first interim, we were going to have $16 million left at the end of this fiscal year. So this will help us to plan out what that is. And we will have direction soon on when we think we'll need to sell. And I had a quick meeting with our new financial advisor about timing and stuff like that, because, and he said, you know, interest rates are up over the last year and there's not anything we can do about that. He does not think that the district is in a position that we need to sell to sell, that our overall financial position and our rating for our district is not going to put us at a disadvantage when it's time to sell. So he doesn't see any reason right now to sell early.
I just thought we talked about this in the owners meeting and I thought we had. There was some like grammar.
And I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I didn't point out that change, that what was approved before was fall of 2023, what we're showing now is TBD. Because we weren't sure what was gonna happen with that 19 million choice tonight, so we didn't wanna have an estimate there. Plus, even without that, we're finding that we brought in more, we brought in $1 million and we brought in additional resources, so it was gonna push that date.
Right, it sounded like it wasn't gonna happen.
Likely fall of 2024. To answer your actual question.
Yeah, it wasn't something we discussed.
Took me a
in the
minute.
owners meeting.
Oh, you're saying you wouldn't actually sell till probably fall of 20.
Yeah, we don't think we're going to need to sell. That was my very long-winded way of saying it. We do not think we will need to sell in fall of 2023.
So, and there's, well, and then, and there's also the possibility that it might be a larger sale. In which case we might only have just 2 trials. So that's the strategy that we need to discuss with you.
They're new on the team, so we haven't, right, they're getting their feet wet, they're great.
Yes. They approved it last board meeting, so they all know that they're new. Thank you.
Does anyone have any?
So I'm in trouble now, right?
No, just, did we get clear direction to you? Did we answer your questions in terms of the kitchen and district office?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, there's some strategies I think that we can put on the table with the owners. And as trustee Wong said, that I think that, you know, we can give it some direction at that point, then to bring back to the board. Either March or April.
Right now, we're just approving your revised budget. So go back to your meeting and then you're gonna come back.
Yes, that's right.
Yep. Anyone have any questions or comments? So we're approving this,
Yeah, we need a
even though we already
have-
changed it.
And we'll bring another change, taking that 19 million out.
Because- Yeah, we would like to capture some of those other things, like to make sure that we have approval to move the McKinley schematic design up and bring in the developed reasons and those other things.
So it's sort of like we're just moving the items on the item along, but it's gonna have to come back.
So we are looking for action.
Okay. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve the current yeah, and knowing that it's gonna come back in another iteration?
I'll motion to approve item 17B, measure of bond budget allocation summary updates.
Would anyone else like?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. 17B, bring sunshine agreement between Burlingame School District and the Burlingame Education Association for an additional salary increase for the 2022-2023.
Thank you, President Mudd. Tonight I bring forward a joint sunshine agreement between the district and Burlingame Education Association. Once you've settled on an agreement, the only way to reopen any sort of the contract, including compensation, is to sunshine it. Joint sunshines are not that common, but it's the way to open on a specific compensation. We agreed that everybody agreed to the 3.5%. If it wasn't done as a joint agreement, you then have to bargain and could essentially end up at impasse for a contract that you had already closed. So it is with pleasure that I bring forward the 3.5% increase retro to July 1 for the 22-23 school year. It's an information item this month, and we would like to bring back the signed tentative agreement and the AB 1200 at the next board meeting. Are there any questions on the BEA agreement?
Would you like to share how it went over?
Yes, it was, they were so surprised that I thought they were speechless. So I actually thought that they were upset. And so I like justified the agreement and this can happen. And obviously you'll need to take it to your unit, let me know. Give me 3 days, we'll bring it to the next board meeting. And their response, the co-presidents at the same time said, where do we find? So it was wonderful.
That was just informational, so we will move on to tentative agreement between Burlingame School District and California Schools for the first additional salary increase for the 2022.
So this one is a little different. It is a tentative agreement that is here as an information item. That's not generally how you see the tentative agreements. This is done because CSEA for the 22-23 school year had a need to, meaning that they get any raise that is given to BEA. So this didn't need to be sunshined, but it cannot be approved until after BEA's tentative agreement is approved. So this just is an information item too. Didn't want to not include it and then they wonder where it was. Yeah.
And tentative agreement with Burlingame School District and unrepresented staff for an additional salary increase for the 2022.
Perfect. So our practice at the Burlingame School District is to offer unrepresented staff as essentially a me too. They do receive the same compensation that the unions receive. So this also is an informational tentative agreement to show that the anticipation is to bring a signed agreement with the AB 1200 to the next board meeting for approval.
I guess I just commented, I'm very pleased that we're able to do this, and I mean, it's somewhat counterintuitive that you were giving a raise most of the way through the year, but we think it's appropriate and well-deserved. We, as a board, want to pay the teachers more, and they deserve it, so we found that we were now able to do this based on where we stand in the budget, so that's the reason for it. Everyone's coming to this discussion later in the game, but we're extremely happy to be able to do it, and we feel very good about how it came out. So just wanted to say that.
Okay. Ready to move on? Okay, item 18, administration A. Resolution 2022-23-23, recognition of National African American History Month, February 2023. Voting item, and Lauren, Trustee Wong, you reading the resolutions.
Okay. Recognition of National African American History Month, February 2023. Whereas the relevance of February goes back to 1926, when founder Dr. Carter G. Woodson first established Negro History Week during the second week of February. Why that week? Because it encompasses the birthdays of Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass, two key figures in the history of African Americans. Whereas in 1976, the week-long celebration was extended to the entire month of February. And whereas National African American History Month, also known as Black History Month, is a national tradition established in response to the inadequate and oftentimes biased depiction of Black history and African American communities in history books and schools curricula of the era. And whereas National African American History Month in February celebrates the contributions Black Americans have made to American history, their struggles for freedom and equality, and deepens our understanding of our nation's history. And whereas National African American History Month is a time for us to continue our collective journey honoring and increasing our knowledge of the history and contributions of Black Americans, the people of African descent, that have been marginalized from mainstream curricula and discussions because of our country's legacy of slavery and institutional and structural racism. And whereas African Americans helped develop our nation in countless ways, those recognized, unrecognized, and unrecorded. And whereas August 2019 marked 400 years since the first arrival of Africans to present-day America, and the United States Congress established the 400 Years of African American History Commission to commemorate the historical heritage and active contributions that Americans of African descent have made to help shape the culture, the cultural, academic, social, economic, and moral attributes of this nation. And whereas this year's theme is Black Resistance, which explores how African Americans have addressed historic and ongoing disadvantage and oppression as evidenced by recent events, and whereas remaining hopeful and confident about the path ahead and a time to acknowledge the courageous fight for the rights, liberties, and freedoms for all Americans. And now therefore be it resolved, the Burlingame School District Board of Education observes and honors African American History Month and encourages educators, students, and families to learn about the heritage and achievements of African Americans through appropriate programs and activities that reflect the theme for 2023.
Right. This is a voting item, so, would anyone like to make a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve the resolution.
Brown, would anyone like to second? Second. Kendall, on favor? Aye. All right, we're moving on to 18B, first read board policy administration. This is an informational item into the first read.
Right. Are there any changes? There are 3 that we're bringing forward tonight. It is 2121 superintendent contract, 2140 evaluation of superintendent, 2110. All of these are coming forward for first read. 2121 is CSBA policy. It was first in 2017. It was last updated in 2019, but in BSD has never actually had that policy previously, so it's brand new to us. 2140 BSD adopted in 2010, and we have not had it updated. It was last updated by CSBA in 2017, but we have not updated it since 2010. And then the board policy 2022-10, excuse me, BSD had it in 2010, but CSBA has updated it in 2018, but we have not updated it since 2010. So all of those are brand new updates to us, and one brand new one to us. Are there any suggestions for us going forward that you'd like to see prior to coming forward for final read?
Yeah, I have a suggestion. I'm not in favor of 2121 in its entirety. We already have contracts that we use. Why do we need to follow what the CSBA does? We have really strong adequate legal counsel that can tell us what provisions to put in the contract. So I don't know why we need to create a standard boilerplate board policy about what's going to be in an individual's contract. I'm unclear. That's why we do that. I'd like the individual to be free to negotiate the terms of their contract rather than the board policy of what the terms of a contract are going to be. And I'm specifically worried about the last provision there, 18 months and whatnot. I don't see why we would do that and have it as a blanket broad provision. Those are my immediate thoughts.
That's 2021, right?
Yes, 21.
21.
Yeah, no, that stood out to me too. I think it was legislated that for superintendents, the contract, the superintendent is, dismissed without cause, it's a 12-month compensation. I thought it was actually legislated. Sure. Yeah, so that surprised me. That it had a- But I think that's not a have to, that was a,
Yeah.
that was just, an option, right? It's still negotiated.
With them, it's a contract.
Right. When you're-
It sets the outer bound, right?
It sets the outer bound, but
Which we could not.
yes, and for some reason, I actually thought, I read that it was legislated, that it was 12. So that's why that stood out.
This hasn't been updated, right, since 2000.
Maybe. That I thought I read that.
A general process. Ratify it. I mean, that's what we do. Deliberate, ratify it. So it's more like specifics to that, or you see.
I'm not there with the policy in its entirety. I mean, I think we already do some of these things and then the specifics, again, I want the parties to the contract to be free to negotiate. I find that last provision especially problematic.
Something more that, I'm curious, it says the board shall designate a representative to negotiate on the behalf. And I'm just curious if in the past, how we've done.
Yeah.
To
And the two trustees would meet with
the lawyer.
the lawyer and would spread the board.
Yeah.
It's always something. We do a lot of things in policy. Like seriously.
I don't have a problem having this. I would maybe amend the 18 months. I would. I can't, does it say anywhere that it has to be ratified?
Yeah. I mean, I think those are processes that we. That's what you're supposed to do.
I definitely agree with changing the 18 months. I think as just a general matter, our policies are formed on the CSBA standards and they're too numerous to possibly develop on our own without following the recommendations. So in general, I kind of support following their recommendations, but I do agree that that provision isn't doesn't make sense. Yeah.
And so this is government.
But 18, yeah, 18 is going. Add on that policy. Maybe we can do one policy at a time.
But I mean, on that, I don't have strong feelings one way or the other.
Okay, so I think what I'm hearing is that 4 out of 5 are okay to put the policy in place with one amendment in 18 to 12, moving 18 to 12.
Well, yeah, I think that's actually the worst.
Or
That's
just
the opposite
to
direction
lead
you
it.
wanted to
To leave that, okay.
But I'm trying to look up the code, being like, yeah. It would be good to have guidance on the code.
Would you like for me to seek guidance on that code?
Yes, please.
What the request. Okay, let's move on. Unless anyone has anything on 2021. Move to evaluation of the superintendent, which is 2140. Did anyone have any comments on that? I did. Okay. I'd like to propose we add a suggested time frame that specifically holds us accountable to the end use.
all mid-year reviews meetings should take place by the last day of January. And all yearly reviews should take place the last day. I feel like we should have them on
Last
there.
year, that's day of January or June.
Mid-year review
Oh, mid-year.
and.
Okay.
Something to hold up accountable.
I think I agree with you, but I have a kind of a procedural question. Would it be better to hold a mid-year review with the president that has the most experience with that superintendent? So our new president comes in December. If we hold a mid-year review in January, it's a new president that wasn't there for the last 6 months.
Right, we'd all be in the mid-year.
Oh, we'd all be there. Oh, okay, then never mind.
Yeah.
Moved on.
Yeah,
That's
I,
all my guess.
my only, thought to that one was that the mid-year review, happened with just the board and not with the superintendent president, like that we actually put that in there. That, that's our time to, you know, share, feedback about how we feel this.
But
On its own, right?
on its own, but then the superintendent would
And then
receive that.
there's another meeting, right, that would include the superintendent to have the discussion, two-part.
Two-part mid-year review.
But I think it needs to be specified that there is an initial meeting where it's just the board.
Right.
Just so there's no surprises.
Okay, and that's for the mid-year.
I think
Or
for both.
both.
I think for
Okay.
both. Just so the expectation is there.
Anyone else have any other comments? Okay, and then let's move to, 22, administrative discussion regarding board policy. Okay.
We want to establish those dates though that you were saying.
Sure.
So that on the second read.
Like,
we won't
maybe
have
this
that
is a good, I was just throwing darts here, but I was thinking a mid-year review should take place by the last day of January. And then, in December, I thought January was enough time to get like the full scope of how the first part of the year went. And then any, all yearly reviews should take place by the last day of the month of March or so.
Oh, it needs to be much later.
Okay.
Well, usually we do it end of May, early June.
Okay,
Yeah, so say.
so how about,
Although it has to be by
By
the last.
the last day of fiscal year. 1830.
Well, we need,
so May?
right, well, the renewal is always July 1st. So it would make sense that our evaluation, which sometimes is lengthy, happens several weeks before everything needs a signature, right?
Okay. So, end of June, end of May?
I don't have a-
I'm trying to think, does it make more sense to give a date for when we initiate the process versus end the process? Because we may need more meetings than we anticipate with the evaluation. I would say begin like that last week of May.
Okay, so. Yearly reviews need to be initiated by the last week of it. No later. than-
Right.
In the mid-year review, though, is there an opportunity for the superintendent, or maybe this is at the end of the year, to create goals for the,
Show progress. I think that was mentioned, but I would think in both. Well, so there, ideally, there's the goals that were set at the beginning of their, like July 1st, there's goals for the year. In mid-year review, you're not necessarily altering the goals, but you're just seeing where are you with them. And of course, we have to be flexible, like new things come up and maybe a different goal pops up, but I would hope you were reviewing in the mid-year what was established in the beginning.
You're saying goals that you've been following that with the board. Work with the board on.
well, like an opportunity, like when
It almost feels like a little too behind if that goal didn't lie.
Well, we usually try to talk about the goals during the end year evaluation. And have it kind of set up so that once the new contract is signed or the evaluation is signed, the final evaluation.
Right.
We know what the academic year goals will be for the next year. Does that make sense? So we're actually having that discussion in our final evaluation in June.
Still, I feel like there's always going to be like a little more enough time to put the goals in place, but I don't know.
Yeah, they're rolling anyway. And flexible too.
Let me get a vote down. Oh, no, we
No,
don't.
we
have
don't.
it. It's just, okay, do you feel like you got everything down? Okay. Okay, great, now moving on to 18C, the SBA delegate assembly election for 2023-2025.
I move we vote for those three people.
Okay,
Three
great.
seats.
Yeah. And it looks like either Trustee Brown or Marla, interim superintendent Marla Silversmith is to sign it. Yes. Okay, brilliant. Would any, you made the first motion, okay, would anyone make the second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item 19, public statements related to non-agenda items.
There are none present.
Okay, board requested items.
I have one request.
So I would like to make a request that that we review our safety plan in open session. I suppose it's been I believe there's a new format for the plan this year. And lately it's been on the consent agenda, but I would like to not, yeah. And maybe to have an update and to learn about the plan, what actions have been taken.
Perfect. Would you like it to be one item with all 7 plans, or would you like to see them individually? They have some of the same and some different
In
information.
the past, it's been like one item and they were all attached. And then like we've had principals come in and speak to their. But
With the redacted. and the
Yeah.
stuff.
So one of the great things about the new DTS plan that we are uploading right now, and it's going well, is there are 2 separate plans. One is for district and one is for public. So it will not be full of redactions and maybe missing. Like, we are super excited about that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's what I support it.
it's you. That was, the second one, we've been hearing from principals talking after Halloween, after Valentine's Day, sugar rushes and crashes, which made me think about our wellness policy. Which is 50-30, and in the policy, I don't think we say that we're gonna review it every couple years. And I think it would be great, that was something that was an effort that was put together with a lot of community involvement. There were doctors involved setting up that policy, but I think that since COVID, we probably have not really visited that. Reviewed with new teachers and everybody in the community. Yeah, we can do that with the nurses. Yeah, what's in our policy?
yeah, there's something really great about our wellness policy is I'm taking a class, and it's focusing on one of the classes I'm taking right now. It's focused on food service. So the wellness policy came up, and there are about 25 people in the class, online class with me, and I linked our wellness policy, and it was like how long it would be, and it was specifically talking about snacks and candy in schools, and everybody was in the class was super impressed with our wellness policy. It's way more robust than any other school has, so we got really good kudos for it.
That's also great. I have two things. One, is it okay?
Oh, yeah.
Did I get three people who?
Yes, I agree. I agree with
Okay.
Elizabeth.
I would be interested in having Nate's presentation again. I don't know if that needs to be on here in advance, but. It's good to see. You can ask just to be sitting there for a long time.
I think we just bring it up.
Bring it up later, yeah. Okay.
And I would vote that we included, truancy,
Truancy,
not just
yeah.
absenteeism, because you can't separate the
Right.
sickness from the.
Anyone else have any? Okay. And then it just occurred to me as we were talking about the board policy, back at 18. Are we allowed to ever go back from something? I'm just curious. It's not a voting item. Can we revisit something?
I don't believe you can, once you pass that item and you have it.
Okay.
Okay. I can clarify that, but I believe that's correct.
Okay. Then we need to, that's. It is 8:01.